Hello everyone, I'm Zenitsu and I'm back with another Digimon deck profile video. So today I'm going to be taking a look at BT14, and BT14 offers us lots of new and powerful tools to be able to build and iterate on some new and existing decks. And today's deck I'm going to be taking a look at is going to be a brand new iteration on the Bloomlordmon deck. So as far as the strategy of the deck goes, plants, fairies, and vegetation has been a tribe since BT10, usually helmed by Bloomlordmon, and even in BT12 with all of the updates that the deck has got, that sentiment is still true as the best way to be able to play the deck, let alone just playing green in general, just because compared to a lot of other green decks, it does have really good consistency and tempo due to all of the support it's gotten over the past couple of sets. There's two main ways to be able to approach the deck, but both are utilizing the same traits as a part of their synergy and overall game plan. So when it comes to the two different versions, you have Bloomlordmon, which usually wants to be a swarm-based deck to fill the field and suspend its own Digimon for various buffs and benefits to be able to aggress onto the opponent and to have some decent control as well. Rosemon is a little bit more on the control-orientated side. When it comes to just being a deck, it's just doing some very simple green-based things on wanting to suspend the opponent's Digimon down and keep their Digimon suspended along with their Tamers as well. The biggest weakness of the deck is the general lack of protection. So your Digimon are vulnerable and there's no good ways to actually protect them. So once you're blown out, it's really hard to be able to make a comeback. But once you get past all of that, it's still just one of the best, if not the best, green deck to be playing with currently. So with all that said and done, let's just dive right into the deck profile. Starting off with the Digitamers, I'm going to be running 4 copies of Kokomon. So Kokomon from EX4 is just in here as the deck's main draw engine, just because when we're suspending our own Digimon down, which is what Bloomlord already wants to do, then it's going to allow us to be able to draw a card. And if you wanted to run a 5th Digitama, then you could run something like Argamon from BT2, just because it allows us to have some nice passive memory generation to make even more explosive plays if our Digimon is able to stick on the field. Then, when it comes to the level 3s, I'm running a pretty simple but effective level 3 lineup. I'm going to be using 4 copies of the BT10 Palamon and 4 copies of the BT13 Lalamon. They're both in the deck just basically acting as good consistency tools, letting us look for our plants, fairies, or vegetation-based Digimon. Then with Lalamon, it also has an upside on being able to fish out a Yoshino if you're going to be playing that, on top of an inheritable ability to be able to reduce the cost of our Digivolution as long as we have a green tamer in play to make it even easier and faster for us to climb up our stages. Then I'm also going to be running 2 copies of Palamon. So this is the brand new BT14 version of Palamon, and this card is really strong at being able to potentially gain us some extra tempo because it's going to apply a nice debuff onto one of the opponent's Digimon, where when their Digimon becomes suspended, they're going to lose 2 memory, and this lasts until the end of their turn, really limiting what they could potentially do unless they want to suffer the downsides of this debuff, which we also have ways we could potentially trigger it ourselves. Then on top of that, it also has a nice inheritable ability doing something very similar to Lalamon to have consistency on being able to reduce the cost of our Digivolutions when our Green Tamer is set up. And then I'm also going to be running 2 copies of Pamumon. So this is the BT9 Pamumon, and this is a really good floodgate for this current meta because it states that all players can't play Digimon by card effects. We have ways to be able to get off of this card ourselves, so it's not necessarily hurting us as much as it could potentially hurt the opponent, even though we do play Digimon ourselves by our card effects. Again, it's just to try to slow the opponent down as best as we possibly can. And then the last rookie and the surprise of the deck is going to be 2 copies of Ukomon. So the promo Ukomon is actually a really insane card in this deck just because of what Ukomon is doing on top of how we could utilize this card. So Ukomon already is a really good card at being able to turbo out our raising area because when one of our Digimon moves from the raising area to the battle area, we get a hatch a Digi-Egg in our raising area to basically refresh refresh itself, and we're going to also gain a memory. The cool thing about this card is the fact that it does see itself when it leaves. Then on top of that, the crazy thing about this is the fact that it does have fairy in its trait, so some of our cards actually do interact with it, even though it's not a green Digimon. Next, on to the level 4s, I'm going to be running 4 copies of Sunflowmon. So this is the BT10 version of Sunflowmon, and this is just still one of the best cards on helping us flood the field as best as we possibly can, because its when Digivolving ability states that we get to suspend one of our green Digimon to play a Digimon from our hand with a plant, fairy, or vegetation in one of its traits with 3000 DP or less for free. Then it also has a nice inheritable ability that's helping us draw some cards for suspending one of our other Digimon down, which we can very easily do on our higher stages to be able to make sure our deck is going to be as consistent as it possibly can. Then I'm going to be running 3 copies of the BT14 Sunflowmon. So this is another really good card at just being able to try to tempo ourselves out, because we get to suspend this Digimon and have one of our Digimon digivolve into a Digimon with fairy in one of its traits from our hand for its Digivolution cost. And when we would digivolve utilizing this effect, then we get to reduce the Digivolution cost by 2. And then the last champion of the deck is going to be 4 copies of Togemon. So this is the brand new BT14 Togemon, and when we would play a green Tamer from our hand, we get to suspend one of our green Digimon to reduce the play cost of that Tamer by 3, which could really help at making sure we have efficient and effective ways at playing out our Tamers. And then on top of that, like with Sunflowmon and a lot of our other rookies, it has that same inheritable ability to reduce Digivolution costs with a green Tamer on the field. And then when it comes to the level 5s, I'm going to be running 4 copies of a Jetarmon. So a Jetarmon, like Sunflowmon from BT10, is helping us try to swarm the field as best as we possibly can, because it has that same ability where we get to suspend one of our green Digimon to be able to play one from our hand for free. That's 3000 DP or less, and also part plant, fairy, or vegetation. Then it has the inheritable ability to gain a memory when one of our Digimon becomes suspended, so that way we have extra tempo when we use our level 6 Digimon. Next, I'm going to be running 2 copies of Lilymon Ace. So Lilymon Ace is going to be that level 5 fairy that we could use in combination with the BT13 Sunflowmon to have an easy way to get up into this card. Not that we need it, because it's already a really cheap card for us to hard play, and the fact that it also is an Ace card means it comes with that hand counter blast Digivolution ability to be able to potentially digivolve into this card during the opponent's turn when they're attacking. Then she has a nice on-play and when digivolving ability where we get to suspend one of the opponent's Digimon down and then return one of the opponent's suspended Digimon with 5000 DP or less to the bottom of their deck for some solid extra removal or control. Then I'm also going to be running 1 copy of Bloomlordmon from BT3, just because this is a really easy card for the deck to use, fitting within its typing, on top of the fact that Digisorption 3 allows us to suspend a Digimon to be able to reduce its Digivolution cost by 3, which means that it basically is going to Evo for 0, allowing us to be as tempo efficient as we possibly can. Then I'm also going to be running 1 copy of Cherrymon from BT10, just because it has Digisorption 2, so it's similar to Bloomlordmon, and the fact that we do have other ways to be able to reduce our Digivolution cost means that it still could potentially be a free evolution. Then it has a nice defensive ability where during the opponent's turn, when an opponent's Digimon attacks, we get to switch the target of the attack to one of our other suspended Digimon, so that way we could try to use our Digimon alternatively in a defensive way. And then when it comes to the level 6 lineup, we're not really going to be changing the level 6 lineup that we've been playing in the past. So we're still going to be running the 4 copies of Bloomlordmon, because this card is just that insane, and the fact that he is, well, the key card of the whole deck. So he has a nice when digivolving ability where we get to suspend one of our Digimon down, and then we get to gain 1 memory for each suspended Digimon with plant, fairy, or vegetation in one of their traits that we have in play. Then if we gained 2 or more memory with this effect, we get to unsuspend this Digimon, and it's also going to be gaining piercing, making sure that our damage is actually going to be going through as best as we possibly can allow it. So the fact that we're going to use our lower levels to be able to suspend other Digimon or suspend themselves down, play out out other Digimon for us to, well, use them to suspend down as extra fodder allows this type of ability to be really easy, effective, and powerful. And then it gains extra benefits because of his secondary ability, where for every 2 suspended Digimon we have in play, then this Digimon gains plus 2000 DP and a security attack plus 1. So the more Digimon we have in play, let alone the more that are suspended, the stronger this card is going to be at being able to deal some really decent damage at punching into the opponent's security. Then I'm also going to be running 3 copies of Hydramon. So Hydramon is still just the best secondary level 6, so we're going to continue to run him, just because his when digivolving ability allows us to suspend 1 Digimon down. So it could be him, it could be an opponent's Digimon, it could be another Digimon, it doesn't really matter. He's just suspending something down, which is still really good, so we could use him with a whole bunch of our other synergies. Then he has a nice ability where during all turns, once per turn, when an opponent's Digimon becomes suspended, for each other suspended Digimon with plant, fairy, or vegetation in his traits, we get to gain 1 memory. So he's acting similarly to Bloomlordmon, where when we go up into him, he's not going to be costing the printed Digivolution cost, and he's going to be making himself a little bit cheaper than he normally would. Then, on top of that, he has a 3rd ability, where at the end of your turn, if we have 2 or more suspended plants, fairies, or vegetation traded Digimon in play, then we get to return one of the opponent's suspended Digimon to the bottom of their deck. So we could use this with his when digivolving ability to force a Digimon to be suspended, and then put that suspended Digimon to the bottom of their deck thanks to his ability with a nice setup field, acting as a really good control tool for the deck to use. And then when it comes to the level 7s, I'm going to be running 2 copies of Quartzmon. So even though this isn't a plant, fairy, or vegetation, this is still just an absolutely insane card to use because it's rewarding us for utilizing everything that the deck is already trying to do. So when we digivolve up into him, we get to suspend all other Digimon and all other Tamers on the field. Then for every 2 cards that are suspended, we get to gain 1 memory, so he could make himself even cheaper to go up into. Then he has a nice Alterns ability to take advantage of the fact that we're suspending everything on the field, where it isn't allowing anything to unsuspend. Then he has a nice 3rd ability for when we're attacking with this card, where we get to suspend one of the opponent's Digimon or Tamers down in case something isn't suspended, and then we get to trash the top card of their security for every 5 cards that are suspended. So this is just really strong at being a good floodgate and potential game finisher. And then when it comes to the Tamers, I'm just going to be running a pretty simple but effective Mimi lineup. So I'm going to be running 3 copies of the BT1 Mimi, just because she's going to be comboing with our Ukamon, allowing us to try to turbo our raising area so we can make our Ukamon's effect to be able to gain us a memory and hatch right away, even more potent, as long as we have a level 5 or higher green Digimon in play to be able to utilize her secondary effect. On top of that, she's going to be the deck's dedicated memory fixing tamer to make sure we're always at least 3 memory to make our plays as effective as we can possibly make them. And then the other tamer of the deck is going to be 1 copy of the BT14 Mimi. I wish there was more room to be able to play more of this card because it's a really good searching tool for our plants, fairies, and vegetations. And then on top of that, she's just really good at helping with additional tempo, where it's allowing us to be able to gain a memory by suspending this tamer when an effect suspends a Digimon. This could be suspending our Digimon or suspending the opponent's Digimon. And then when it comes to the options, I'm going to be running 1 copy of Hidden Potential Discovered because, well, this card basically is almost an auto win button when we see it going up into our level 6s because we can gain lots of tempo from our level 6s. So the fact that we get to suspend one of our Digimon down to reduce the next Digivolution by 5 is definitely not a downside for this deck. And then when it comes to the other options, you can kind of run whatever you feel like. I'm going to be running 4 copies of Agility Training just because the training cards are really good at trying to find all of our other parts and pieces. This is looking for just green cards. Doesn't matter if it's a tamer, option, or Digimon. It allows us to just take it and add it into our hand, setting itself up for its secondary main ability of delay to allow our Digivolutions to be even more efficient, allowing our Digimon to digivolve into a green Digimon. And if we used this effect to digivolve, then we get to reduce the cost by 2, mostly utilizing this with our level 4s to basically go up into them for free. But if you wanted to run green memory boost, then you could kind of play around with the ratios between the training cards and the memory boost, because they're doing some very similar things on being another way to have some solid consistency and extra momentum. But that's pretty much it for the main deck, and there are just a whole bunch of other useful cards that you could think about utilizing depending on how you're going to be approaching the deck. Not only just the build between Bloomlord and Rosemon, but all of the different tech and tools that each of the different variants are going to be running, all utilizing plants, fairies, and vegetations. We even have a couple of cards that we can include that are outside of that. It really just depends on the types of effects that you're going to be playing around with and you're looking for, on top of what abilities you need to be able to interact and counteract what the meta is going to be presenting you with. And then the crazy thing is this deck is a decent investment to make, just because we do know it is going to be getting some potential future upgrades in BT15 with the Palmon X line and Quantumon from the limited set that's going to be fused with BT15.